Here's something I
Oh,
just
shoot.
got from, what is it? I don't know. It's 35 millimeter film. It says color print, revised end title. This may be another copy of the 52nd Street video, but
Yeah.
this was at Steve's house, and we're going to find out what it is.
This is Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast.
Hey, this is Liberty DeVito.
This is John Jackson, director of the Billy Joel Archive.
This is Russell Javers.
This is Mike Del Judas.
This is Richie Canada, and you're listening to Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast. It's awesome.
All right, everyone. Happy 2026. We are kicking off the year with some exciting news and updates from the Billy Joel world. We have John Jackson, once again, the director of the Billy Joel Archives on. This is actually kind of a milestone year. This is the 50th anniversary of Home Run Productions. So this is when Billy had the management go in-house. Elizabeth was heading it up. This is when Billy started really documenting a lot of his shows, creating a lot more media. From 76 on is when we really start getting a lot of footage. With that anniversary, we're going to start seeing a ton of great stuff. We've teased some of the releases that we know about into next year, but sitting down with John, we're excited to get more of a full slate of what's in store for 2026. So John, once again, Happy New Year, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jack. You too. Hey, Michael.
So there's a lot of new stuff on tap for this year, John. Is there an easy way to give an overview of what we can expect?
We've got a bunch of different channels that we're putting stuff into. I think the most obvious is our YouTube program, which we sort of have up and running now. There's a new clip going in every week. I believe that there's an option to, if you sign up for Billy's mailing list, you can actually have slightly earlier access to those clips than the YouTube channel. So get on over there and sign up for the email list, the fan club. And then we're also putting up, in addition to the weekly clips, we're putting up clips that make sense over time. So for instance, we just put up the live version of She's Right on Time from 2021, sort of a rare song for him to perform. He gives it a nice introduction that says, this is the one song I wrote about Christmas. And for New Year's Eve, kind of a definitive edit from the original sources of the Madison Square Garden 1982 into 83 New Year's Eve, because we found the individual cameras on those. It turns out to be about 20 minutes of footage. They shot it so that they could deliver the countdown in Auld Lang Syne to local media. And obviously they wanted to control it. So they brought the cameras in. It's odd. We've got several New Year's Eve countdowns from over the years. That's, the first one and kind of the most famous, but we've also got the Millennium Concert, and we've got 2013 at Barclays, and stuff that went out over New Year's Rockin' Eve over time. And there's a lot of cool moments like that we've got to use for when it's appropriate. And we started this conversation by saying it's the 50th anniversary of Home Run. When you look at it like that most artists were either doing things because a broadcaster wanted to document something, or, in Europe or Canada, or somebody was on tour, and, you kind of got this stuff by accident. TV programs like Old Grey Whistle Test, or, even Ed Sullivan's show or something like that were meant to help to get the artist promoted, but weren't necessarily controlled by the artist.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to Home Run, when Billy took all of his production and, management and booking and everything in-house, and, there's that famous Home Run introduction promo video where he's telling people what they're doing, and that's new management. And you not only see Elizabeth and Dennis, who's obviously there from the beginning, but, John Small is there, Jeff Schock is there, and you see people who were very integral in, okay, what is this going to look like? Not just shows and albums and stuff. It was like, okay, so we're going to have a visual side of this. And then that's where you get the first time that they're doing okay, this is our production, and it's Steve, it's Brian, it's John Small, it's, the whole team doing a thing to go, this is what this guy performs like, so that everybody can see it. And it was just, genius. And because of that, that's a whole heap of stuff to go through in this 50th anniversary of Home Run and Turnstiles and Billy Joel Tonight, and really sort of the front end of the rocket taking off, which because of, various copyright issues in Europe and other places, we're going to need to figure out seriously what we want to do with this stuff. But that also includes like the Bottom Line show from 76. It includes demos and outtakes and things that have circulated. But because of copyright law, if you don't formally release these things, in a lot of countries, they fall into the public domain. You've seen 50th anniversary packages from Bob Dylan and the Beatles and the Stones and, people that want to protect this stuff. And we're now into that with Billy, because the stuff before, the 73, 74, 75 stuff wasn't nearly as well documented and captured.
Right.
And we've done the MMR show, we did Great American Music Hall, we've done some of that stuff, but going into this period is when being on TV and providing clips for MTV or European television or whatever becomes much more of a thing in the business.
Yeah.
So you get a lot more stuff captured, and we'll go through the 50th anniversary of The Stranger and 52nd Street and et cetera, and on we go. And so when you get to Billy Joel Tonight, which is December of 76, I mean, there is no doubt that it was completely Elizabeth's idea to capture this show, to have a TV airing of it, to get it out there as not only promo, but money-making. We have all of this stuff for the 50th anniversary that no one's ever seen before. So they captured sound check, they captured dress rehearsal, they captured the whole concert, and there were bits and pieces of it in the doc film. We put a little bit of, I think, Weekend Song, and finally had the words To Tell You. There's the guys in street clothes, t-shirts and jeans. It looks like the exact same show because they're doing the blocking and the lighting and everything. But they're running through songs like Great Suburban Showdown and Stop in Nevada and stuff like that. The show itself is only an hour of what's ever been out there before.
What's the plan for releasing all that? Do you think it's going to feel like a narrative, or are they going to be individual videos or one package?
I think both. I mean, the short answer is I have no idea at this point. But
Well, we
but,
have ideas,
Yeah, exactly. No, I think some sort of a narrative, that includes commentary from people that were there and why is this important and what were you doing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it really was the last, between December 76 and June, July of 77, it's the last times that he's playing theaters. It's the last time that he's, literally high-fiving the audience at the end of the show, like he's that close to it.
Yeah.
It does represent, the end, the end of that era. And I think some narrative explaining that and saying, why does this stuff exist and what was everybody doing? And I know Steve has got some ideas for this, but yeah, something where there's a narrative, but then also, I'm sure even in that, if you were to make a 2-hour narrative film about the idea of Billy Joel Tonight, you'd still have all this other stuff left over. So, individual clips of songs, much like we were talking about the New Year's Eve 82 thing, or the Budokan Glass Houses stuff. It's, for some reason, the camera's cut on and off. Who knows why? Someone was directing it from a truck or, side of the stage, something like that. You can never tell why these decisions were made, but 50 years later, we just need to work around them and, let people see what we do have, what was captured.
Yeah.
And you see, it's tough to say for sure, but, the dress rehearsals, the recordings, it's hard to think that they weren't doing something like what Songs in the Attic turned into, which was, hey, I've got all these great songs. I have this new great band. Let's record them since we're all set up to record. So things like Great Suburban Showdown, it's like, that sounds awesome with the band. They knew that they were capturing it on multi-track tape, with a proper truck and the whole thing. So you have to think that there was that germ of an idea of, this band sounds fantastic. Let's do some of this older material, not just the Turnstiles record. stuff. And even the stuff that they were doing to fill out the rest of the concert, they were going deeper than that to try and figure out what those songs would sound like with this new band. So it's some fascinating stuff, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
And covers. I mean, there's like an early version of him doing Born to Run. That's,
Oh, wow.
within a year of that record even coming out.
Yeah, that would have been contemporary.
That's
fascinating.
Funny.
You get a real glimpse behind the curtain of what was going on at a time when they were trying to figure it out. There was no clue that this was the upward part of the career. It was just sort of, this is what we're doing right now, and fighting to make him relevant.
Billy Joel Tonight's sort of like the flagship for Home Run then. That was the first big production then.
It was their first public production, as that company. I mean, they were doing concerts, obviously, and Dennis was producing the concerts as Home Run with Steve and Brian. But yeah, this was the first sort of media that they were generating. Turnstiles had been recorded, and obviously that was a Columbia Records thing. But this was their thing to get out ahead of controlling the narrative of who Billy was and what he was up to. One of the many genius things that Elizabeth brought us.
These were so rare up through the 80s and into the 90s to have a concert video. I mean, there wasn't even a VHS rental. What was it? Time Life? You had to order for it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And get it on a reel or something.
There's a copy on eBay right now of a VHS from Michael sent me that link the other day that you would have either purchased or gotten as a some sort of a broadcaster back then. So that was the only way to do it, was physical, duplication, and then, mailing it to somebody. So it was tough to come by.
What's sort of on tap for January?
Well, for the YouTube channel, we'll just continue until we're done with the Houston Summit.
Okay.
And then we'll finish up the rest of the Wembley Arena show from '84, the BBC show, because we put some of those clips out when we put the soundtrack to the doc out, but we've got the rest of them. So we'll roll those out. So at least that'll be sort of a definitive look at that show.
Yeah.
And then from there, a lot of other shows from different tours and different time periods that, one of my key sort of things to look out for is making sure that the different eras are represented.
Yeah.
And we're not going super hard at, one particular thing, but really doing the whole career. So, sometimes we'll go over to 94 and sometimes we'll go back to 78 and sometimes we'll do this. And, so
that's kind of our approach too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You'll see things come out, but it's cool to see the definitive version. And then, if you think about what some of this means, like the Houston Summit, for instance, yes, it's a cool show. Yes, it's 52nd Street tour. We don't have much of that. But it's also, the backstory of that Phil Ramone was there, and they're doing 3 songs from Glass Houses that they either had recorded or had not recorded yet. We're not sure.
Because it was literally in the middle of the recording sessions. Yeah.
Exactly. So, you get All for Lena, you get those songs. And it's to think that an audience would have sat there and seen this and said, I've never heard this song. Like, I've never heard All for Lena before.
It's like, come on.
It's kind of crazy. And then it exists, and then it's a hit. Moments like that, we want to just make sure that people are aware of like the context. It's not just, hey, here's a live version of this thing, So we did some social media about that Phil was there and that he had produced The Stranger and 52nd Street. And, so we try to give that little flavor. And I know you guys do too.
And it was something too that when we were talking about Glass Houses with Brad over the summer, and, memory is always foggy. And so he's like, I'm so glad we've got some of these track sheets and these notes so we can kind of figure like, oh, vocals were done this day, things like that. He didn't remember why they had a month off in November of 1979. Like, he's like, that's weird. We don't have anything from that month. And then we told him like, well, yeah, they went out and did 20 something shows just to get out.
Well, I'm sure that there was a big money offer. I'm sure that, playing arenas at that time was something you wanted to stay on top of and not lose your draw, particularly in markets that you're not that you're not from, you know.
Mhm.
So being in Houston, Texas at an arena, if you got that offer, you got to go do it.
And if you look at those dates during that month too, it was a lot of the B markets and the smaller markets as well. So it wasn't like he wasn't playing, New York and LA and Detroit, and it was, some of the smaller cities that he doesn't necessarily play on an album cycle, but got to play in between.
I mean, and speaking of stuff like that, we've got footage of, I think it's the third show of the 52nd Street tour at the Philadelphia Spectrum. It's like a week before 52nd Street is released as an album. He does New Haven Coliseum. I think he did Boston and then Philly. So it may have even been like the third show. We have footage of that. And he's introducing a new song. He's like, here's a new song. It's one of these ones that I get in trouble for. But I don't care. And then he plays My Life. No one in this arena has a copy of the song My Life yet. But here he goes, he's going to play it for you. This is the first time people are being exposed to this thing that we all know as a classic. Isn't that a cool moment to be able to see?
And to hear how he's framing it too, because as you're teeing that up, I'm thinking to myself, he's about to play Stiletto. And he thought that My Life was going to be the next, Only the Good Die Young, thumbing his nose at some institution.
Exactly. So that's the YouTube side of it. And then the other video side is going to the original elements on all of the long forms, the concert films, and making sure that we have the most up-to-date, the best looking, best sounding versions of these things to go to video on demand. And we're working right now on a new version of Frankfurt 94. So Live from the River of Dreams show. We came across the original 8 cameras. The original set was, I think, 22 songs. The version that was on television, actually several different versions were on different televisions like VH1 in Europe and then the Disney Channel in the US. And there was a DVD of it, but there's actually several different edits of the same show that are out there, which is sort of maddening. But so we're working on a new cut, kind of a definitive cut of that show with remixed audio and sort of a complete thing. So you'll see that launching at Amazon Prime and different VOD partners in 2026, along with the full MSG 100 show, which is not the CBS special, but it's the original full show in the order that it was performed. So you'll see those two as kind of new director's cuts or whatever you want to call them. Still looking for the missing 5 songs from Live from Long Island, which I know people have been asking about the audio because we put out the vinyl for Record Store Day, also in the Volume 2 box set. But what we're trying to do is figure out a definitive concert film for that. So we've got original master of the songs that we all know. We've got the new mix of the songs that Brian Ruggles and Jay Bakari did in 2022, putting at least those together and then making every effort we can to find the missing 5 songs that were cut out of the original broadcast and Laserdisc and stuff like that. So completing these things and giving them to people in their best quality, longest quantity versions so that they're definitive and forevermore. Like we've done with Yankee Stadium, like we did with Leningrad.
It's interesting now, as we've been talking about the different delivery methods for a lot of this content over the years. You used to just have 1 or 2 types of channels. So now we have the opportunity, like you said, to deliver things either via streaming or, video on demand or YouTube, as well as physical releases. What goes into the driving decisions on where some of these things are going to live?
Besides YouTube, it's really just a matter of who Sony Music and Columbia have as partners that they feed to. And that has to do with, sort of corporate deals that they've done with the various streamers and stuff. But they do have things like Amazon Prime, where you can rent and buy, or sometimes it'll be included with your subscription, or YouTube. Those are the two big ones where you'll find these things. YouTube is the biggest website on earth. And I think it's, 2 or 3 billion people at any time are using it. So it's like, if you want to see this stuff, you'll be able to find it. But other than that, I'd love it to be everywhere, but it has to do with, deals and distribution that they have.
Is there certain criteria that you're looking at when you decide something is going to be worthy of a physical package?
You always want to try to plan for something like that, because a physical release is, it's just taken more seriously by media, by people who are going to help you get the message out there. I of course enjoy having physical things that you can put your hands on and say, this exists. But I think you have to understand that that's not for everything, and you can't do physical on, 400 different concerts and, all of this stuff all the time. So I think for every pillar of this, as we're going forward, there will be things like the Frankfurt show where we're like, we want this available. It's not available for streaming or, video on demand. We have the original stuff. We want to make it as great as possible so that we can launch it at video on demand, have it be great. People can go see it. End of story. We don't need a revised Live from the River of Dreams physical package to make that happen. And it gives you a lot of opportunity to do more things. Bruce or Pink Floyd or whomever can do, 1 or 2 maybe physical things in a year, whereas you could really get unlimited if you're looking at it as some things go in one stream, some things go in another stream, some things go in, all of the streams. It's really just a case by case thing.
This model of the reissue with the live concert, I think Springsteen and Billy, to the best of my knowledge, sort of pioneered it. I mean, I remember the Born to Run anniversary with Hammersmith Odeon. That was the one that really clued me in. But of course, The Stranger had Carnegie Hall. And it seemed like that went away for a little while, but that it is coming back. I mean, in the classic rock bands that I follow, like Jethro Tull, Steven Wilson has been remixing all those albums for probably a decade or more, but each one has come with a concert from that tour a little, or at least there's more of a model for it.
I think what you're seeing in Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, etc., are these 50th anniversary things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice round number to celebrate, but it also has to do with some of this copyright protection stuff that we've been talking about. It's a way to re-engage people, that might not have listened to the record in a while, or, expand the story of it or what have you.
Video on demand. Now you're saying like Amazon Prime, so that's more of like you rent the video. That's not like streaming like Netflix or something where it's just available.
Well, there are partners where they will be available.
Mm.
There's a whole menu of things that's all with Sony of how they distribute their long form titles. Google has a license, so you'll be able to rent or buy via YouTube, rent or buy via Amazon Prime. I think there are a couple of streaming subscription services, like I think Tubi is one that has concert films, that sort of thing. So you do have to track them down, unfortunately, because music content, if it's not the Beatles on Disney Plus, it's sort of you've got to go find it yourself. But it's my view that anywhere you go or any service you subscribe to, you should be able to find some Billy content on there, if not all of it. So obviously Netflix is its own thing. HBO is its own thing. Paramount Plus, it's all very fractured right now. But for the larger services like Amazon Prime and YouTube and stuff like that, you will be able to find these things.
You mentioned that streaming service Tubi. Is that something we should be checking out? Because I feel like there's a bunch of them coming up now, and I don't have the time. But is that a place where you're getting a lot of music videos, you said, or like concerts, things like that?
That's what I've heard. I actually don't subscribe to it, but I know it's on my smart TV, as an option to look at. And I think that they are leaning into music a little bit, like sort of archival music stuff. I mean, someone should. It's ridiculous that you can't see all these classics, in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised. You're right. There hasn't been somebody that's just made up the channel that's just all documentaries. And Amazon Prime, they'll have some documentaries come out sometimes. And there was like one on Howlin' Wolf. I remember I was watching just randomly. You're like, really? I appreciate that somebody put out an hour on Howlin' Wolf. I didn't think to do that, and I really enjoyed myself.
Exactly. No, there's so much. That's sort of the blessing and the curse of all of this is now you can release anything, but it's like, should you?
Right.
And even if you do, if you were to release the greatest, Rolling Stones concert that's ever been captured ever, that no one's ever seen it before, and all this stuff, it's like, how do you get people to care enough to give their streaming hour to it? So that's really the challenge, is like, okay, so we have all this stuff, like, what do we do with it? And YouTube is cool, streaming services are cool, but like even like the redo of the Beatles anthology, it's like it felt like it was a thing for a little while, but like are people watching it on Disney Plus and that sort of thing? I know I did because I love the Beatles, but there's the challenge of getting it in front of people, getting people's attention for that amount of time.
We're always talking about these shows, so something like Frankfurt makes a lot of sense, where it was shot for TV, it was delivered to various channels here and in Europe. But then we hear about things where something was filmed and nothing really seemed to come of it. So it ends up getting bootlegged, or it sits in a vault. We're talking about back when they had to do this on film. So this was kind of a lift. It was a bit of an expenditure, and there was some logistics that went into it. They didn't just hit record on a camera and grab the soundboard audio. So what was the thought process behind let's film this show versus that show? And were they always thinking of a release?
I mean, you have to remember in the 90s and even the 80s and certainly the 70s, having a music title that people could buy on a VHS or a DVD even was pretty rare. If you were an artist that had one or two films, even Pink Floyd The Wall or Hendrix at Woodstock or, any of these like sort of iconic Billy at Yankee Stadium, whatever, home video titles, that was the exception, certainly not the rule. I mean, it was insanely expensive to make these things. Usually you needed a film distributor to actually make them and get them into stores. So Live from Long Island was originally CBS Fox home video. The pipe was pretty narrow of who got to do these things. So yes, capturing them was one thing, but then actually releasing them and making money from them was something totally different. So it was definitely the exception. Artists that would go in and get things filmed either for a TV broadcast or because they wanted to invest in them themselves was pretty rare. And that's why you see so many bootlegs and stuff up on YouTube that's from the Houston Summit, the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. There were a few venues that would do the in-house screens and cameras and stuff and then give the master to the artist after the show. But that was, pretty rare. Of all the venues in the country, those were the two that were kind of doing it. If you were big enough to get on television and have a concert special or something like that, they would put a bunch of money into it. Live from Long Island was for HBO. It was rare, but artists started doing it more in the 80s because video is cheaper to do than film. In the 90s, with the smaller mini DV cameras and stuff like that, it became more and more cost effective to do it, easier to do it. So you got more footage from artists as you went on. There was a show called MTV Music Passport, which was aired on MTV Europe. There were several episodes with different artists and stuff, but the Billy episode, they actually shot a ton of interview. There's that crazy footage of like Liberty and going around London and in his hotel room and, that sort of stuff. I think Liberty and Kevin Dukes, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But they actually shot two shows, one in Birmingham and one in London. obviously wanted a ton of footage so that they could then edit down the episode and make it, as interesting as possible. But now we have all this footage. We have a whole show from Birmingham. We have a whole show from London that's all shot on 16 millimeter color film. I think it's the whole show. Again, of course I could be wrong. We haven't transferred them yet, but it's a pretty amazing thing to have. Hopefully we'll get to that at some point. But it's just one of these things where it's like, and we saw a ton of this from the doc research was there's this huge thing. What do I do with it?
We have Frankfurt, and we've seen 14 out of, you've said 22 songs on this show. But there's different versions of it, right? There's the Disney Channel version. There's the VH1 in Europe version. Who is making these decisions? It seems a little odd to me to think that Home Run or Billy or whomever is just going to go, hey, here's the tape of this show. Cut it however you want. We're not going to worry about how you portray us.
Well, no, I think that for this particular show, when you sign up for a broadcaster to produce a show of yours because it's going to help promote you, whether it's in the US or Europe or Canada or, Australia or whatever, you do give some control to that person or those people. And, obviously you can approve or not approve things. And, who knows why it became 14 songs, other than a time constraint of a television slot. You never know why these things turn out the way that they are. I can tell you that the artist would always be able to say if they liked or didn't like something, but you do put faith and control into the hands of, a Viacom or PBS or whomever is going to pay to have this done. You sort of have to dance with that partner. Sometimes it's for the best and sometimes, not so much. In this case, it's good that we have the original cameras. We have multi-tracks. We can go back and make this. I mean, total inside baseball, but for the doc, I had a file of the version we all know that was on DVD and the My Lives box set and, I think was on Disney Channel. The doc people are going, hey, we need this audience shot from this song. I forget which one it was, and I'm looking at it and I go, I don't have that. Like, where are you seeing that? That's weird. And they're like, oh, it's this version that's on YouTube. And I go and look at the version on YouTube. I go, this is a totally different thing than the thing that I have.
Yeah.
We ended up not even being able to find like where that was, why that was, where the master of that was. It was just an odd anomaly. But when you do give control to people, you can see like different iterations of something that's similar over time. That show was on TV in 94 and then it didn't come out on DVD until 2004. So it was sort of kicking around.
Right.
But one random thing I'm trying to track down is when he did the LA Forum in 81 Glass Houses tour, and the local CBS did a package of, a show preview. They did some footage at the show and then they show clips from the concert at the LA Forum. So I'm like, well, where's the rest of that? Like, I need that. They didn't just shoot the 5 seconds you see in the piece. Maybe they only shot 5 minutes, but it's like, where's the 5 minutes? The CBS station out there says they don't have anything and you have to just keep knocking on doors to find this stuff. But something that we have 3 songs that he did at the Budokan in Tokyo in 1981. You May Be Right, My Life and Honesty, where they specifically had the cameras shoot the songs, but they didn't shoot the whole songs on purpose so that they couldn't be, circulated other than what they wanted them for. But it was to provide to local media of like, this is what the Billy show looked and sounded like.
Yeah.
So you get about 75% each of those 3 songs. But I'm like, hey, that's better than what we have now, which is nothing.
Right.
So, you can see the Glass Houses tour for the first time, the way it actually happened. Sometimes you kind of have to deal with what you have, but it's certainly more valuable than we have the stuff. We want to make it great. We don't want these mushy video transfers from, the early 2000s. God forbid people would want to rent or buy them. We want them to have the best thing.
And then I'm excited because you mentioned Bottom Line. We went through that show a year or two ago, and I really love that one, especially on a close listen. But that was a radio broadcast. What do multi-tracks look like for radio broadcasts, or is that concert to concert? Because I think most of what we hear is a tape of the broadcast, right? Somebody just hit record where they had it on the FM dial.
Correct. Or the station would have. They usually would have given a copy, a sort of a definitive copy to the artist, which is
Okay.
how, for instance, we have 77, the Dome concert from CW Post off of the radio station copy of that show, which hopefully we'll get out as we had, again, a little bit of it in the doc of him introducing Italian Restaurant, playing it for the first time. But for shows like Bottom Line or even, bigger than that, often there are not multi-tracks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, this is what went over the air. The station had, probably a stereo pair or possibly 8 mics or something like that. Fans would tape these things, but other than that, it's like if you didn't listen to it on WNEW on that night at that time, you just missed it. So for Bottom Line, we've got a really good tape. But for things like Billy Joel Tonight, because it was being captured, by the company, we do have multi-tracks. It's hit and miss based on what the priorities were or what was, cost efficient or necessary at that moment in time. And this goes for all artists, whether the label wanted to pay to have somebody record it properly, or it was a promotion thing, or it was something that someone recorded by accident. You never know.
You said the radio station would put up 8 mics. They weren't getting like a board mix?
They could have been. I mean, it all
Mhm.
depends. Somebody like WNEW at the time would have had a slightly more professional LAR, maybe would have just taken a board feed. It depends on the scale of it at the time. I mean, the KZoo in Texas, KZEW, which, we know that footage of The Stranger and Just the Way You Are with the big elephant thing in the background. They actually had a sound stage where they would film things, they would record things, they would have things, and they actually have an archive project that they're doing of all their stuff at the moment. So it really just depended on literally the station, who owned it, and, how much money they were putting into capturing these things.
Yeah, I guess the board mix is going to be a little dry, right? You're not going to get all the crowd noise. It's going to sound a little more isolated.
Exactly, yeah.
So when you're looking at something like Bottom Line, where you have maybe the stereo pair from the radio, I'm curious, as much of it is a bad word, and I think usually rightly so these days in entertainment, but sort of AI, the most advanced editing, how does that play into what we can get out now in terms of restoring or remixing or enhancing like a stereo pair versus a multi-track?
I mean, it can be done. I think studio recordings, like what Giles Martin has done for Beatles records, where he takes a 4-track and can split it out into 24 tracks, or he can take 1 track of drums and make it a mixable drum kit, I think is more straightforward. Once you get into like a live show with a lot of ambience and people talking and, stuff like that, it's more difficult. And it's sort of a moment. I don't think you want to really get too much into messing with something like that. I think it's more like the video, like what's the best quality we have? What is the most complete thing we have? Is this the right thing to do?
You're not going to reimagine something that was a radio broadcast. It sounds like you want to preserve the experience of tuning in and hearing it.
Exactly.
The MSG 100 show will be re-released, but just as the concert, because obviously the CBS special, it was cut up out of sequence. It had a lot of interstitial stuff. There were interviews with band members, audience members, things like that. And so this is going to be a different version of it coming out.
Well, it'll just be the show as it was performed.
It was shot so well. I think even at the time, Steve's like, it'd be a shame not to do something again, with this footage.
Exactly. No, it's gorgeous. And the constraints of CBS were such that, they moved songs around and put in the stuff of some of the fans and the stuff with the band and everything. And it's just the show as it happened, which was phenomenal.
And that's what's fun about this, that we can get the official version of that now. I mean, how long have we watched? I don't know if it'll ever come out, but how long have we watched like the full Millennium concert, on YouTube or something, and when it goes up and down, that sort of thing. And to see something that's shot this well, especially with the lighting now, I think we were talking about that at some point recently, just so you could see all the bracelets and they don't have to bring the lights up and you really capture the ambiance. You could really get into the audience in these new ways.
Yeah, I mean, the cameras they brought in for that thing were just unbelievable. They
Yeah.
usually have a bunch of cameras at his shows, which is how we get things like She's Right on Time. But, the additional stuff they brought in was just spectacular to look at.
Not only how the production changed and the stage changed, but just the technology of capturing this evolved over the years. When you're looking at older edits, what was the style of the time?
Well, when we did Yankee Stadium, and we've talked about this, the trend at the time was that sort of lag camera, which was everything was shot at 15 frames a second instead of 30 or 12 instead of 24, I forget, but it was filmed at half speed so that when you played it at regular speed, it looked all choppy and like the audience was, but that was very in fashion then. And then when we went back and redid it in 2022, it's like we sort of said, let's have as little of that as possible, please.
Yeah.
So that it feels more like a concert film from today. But, tastes change, technology changes, as you said, the styles change and things are done at a time for a reason. And it's our job to evaluate and work with what we have.
Talking about like future-proofing things, and this will get into the weeds a little if you don't mind. When you get a piece of film and it's, 16 millimeter versus 32 millimeter, is there sort of like a rough translation to that in terms of like, oh man, this is only 16. This is going to be really difficult to make look good versus, okay, great, this is 32. Or, hey, film is just so detailed that we can work with 16.
If you do 16 to 4K, which is what we've done for Sparks, it's phenomenal. I mean, you can get a lot of quality out of that, more than videotape. 16 is not a problem. It's when you get to 8 millimeter, which was sort of more the consumer home video at the time. There's diminishing returns of the more quality of a scan you do of every frame, the worse it starts to look. So if you're doing 8 millimeter, 4K can start to make it look worse than HD, than 1080. We found some footage of Elvis at Madison Square Garden in 72 that a guy had shot from like the fourth row in an 8 millimeter. And we did that in, I think it was HD and 4K. And the HD just looked better, like to your eye. It just was like, oh, that looks more like a concert, just started to look muddy and weird the more detail you put into it. So there is diminishing returns at a certain point. It's the same with audio. It's the same with, scanning a photograph. I did some scans of some stuff at like 1200 DPI. And it's like, it just becomes, you're not getting any more quality. The files are just ridiculously huge. It's tough to even move them around or open them and look at them and that sort of thing. Right. So, as an archive person, you kind of have to say like, what's the best you can do and still maintain like a manageable way to do it. By the time this airs, we just did She's Right on Time from the original 1-inch Video Master to HD to replace the YouTube clip. That was not his worst looking videos. The 52nd Street videos are the worst looking videos right now.
Yeah, so dark.
But, because it's Christmas and because we wanted to, have some social media clips and stuff, we did that one at HD. So you'll see that change over, I think, this week at some point. Then we're doing that as well, going back through the known things, bringing them all up to spec. Some of it, again, you saw on the doc, new transfers of things like the 52nd Street film. I have all the film from the Uptown Girls shoot transferred, so we could recut that faithfully or not.
And there were 2 versions of that video back in the day, too.
There were.
I think it was specifically for MTV because they would cut inside the gas station and the attendant was tell her about it on MTV.
Here's something I just got from, what is it? I don't know. It's 35 millimeter film. It says color print, revised end title. This may be another copy of the 52nd Street video, but
Yeah.
this was at Steve's house, and we're going to find out what it is.
Do you open it up and just like put it up to the light like in the movies? Does that work? Or do you not want to risk it?
I tried with that. The tail of it is so long that I was like 50 feet into it, and it's like I still wasn't even at a picture yet. So I'm like, I can't. I got to have it done professionally. But, for Sparks, it was 4 or 5 different boxes and little inventory clues that led us to the actual stuff. And there was some at Sony and some in Billy's vault, and little spools of black and white 16 with a rubber band around them. And it just said, some were like, this is, it just said, she's got away.
Yeah.
And you go, well, I know that there was a she's got away Sparks clip that ended up not getting used. It could be that. Okay, let's see what that is. And then there's stuff that just says Sparks, and then there's stuff that just said Songs from the Attic. So, we got it all called in, and we're like, okay, I think this is this piece. And, and we're still missing a few things. You won't know it when you see it, but, there's still little bits and pieces of the cameras that are like, we don't have that. Again, when you're dealing with a box full of, little reels of developed film from back then, it's pretty awesome.
Growing up in the 80s and into the 90s, if you weren't at a flea market, hunting down VHSs, you only had these official releases for the most part. Maybe you got that one Unleashed in the Studio sort of live album with a ton of overdubs or something, and all the stage patter cut out. Now that we're getting official releases of all these concerts, after years of getting snippets on video, is this recasting, do you think, how people are looking at these classic artists? Are new fans or new listeners getting a different picture, you think, than we got when we only had those studio albums and maybe 1 or 2 live releases? Are their perspectives of these artists different?
I mean, I certainly hope so. The idea of Billy's live shows from this, the 70s and early 80s, it's something that's completely legendary where we live on the East Coast. But a lot of people didn't see him or weren't able to see that band doing that show at that time. Yeah, I think that seeing these things now with some perspective on them can be totally mind-blowing, to see that people were out there doing this. Not for nothing, but people were doing this, 5 or 6 nights a week, travel every day and, getting sick and being tired and whatever. The singer was doing, 90% of the heavy lifting. It's pretty phenomenal to be able to go back and see these moments, especially when they maybe weren't meant to be captured, but they were anyway.
You wonder optimistically if this trend of releasing old concerts doesn't sort of reverse something in today's current live environment where I think for a while it's been kind of canned. When you get to a certain level, it's a lot of click tracks, it's a lot of backing tracks, it's a lot of things sounding like the album. Perhaps you guys are educating the next generation coming up that they're gonna look at what we're listening to now and be like, dude, this is so square. Like, we want to play it like these old, like it used to be where it was freewheeling and it didn't sound like it,
That's always been the difference between pop acts and rock and roll acts. Rock and roll acts have become popular from time to time and have had hit songs and been personalities and stuff like that. But, the idea of a rock and roll concert is supposed to be loose and off the cuff, and, the set list changes, or you perform this a certain way, or it's a different guitar solo or whatever. And it's just, that's the show, and you just do it because that's what feels right. And whereas pop music, all the way back to, whoever you want to say, is usually very controlled. You sing the song this way and that's it. And you get up to today where people are doing, backing tracks or click maps, and, it's just sort of, you're going to get the same show, whether you see it in Philly or in, Tucson. It's going to be exactly the same show. The variety of, call them bootlegs or live recordings or videos or whatever, is just, none of it is special because you were there on a particular night. Whereas I think bands, and I think you're seeing some more rock and roll bands coming back these days. It's such cyclical, but I think that they can appreciate the fact that, it is supposed to be dangerous. It's supposed to be, who knows what's going to happen tonight if you go to the show. Yeah, I think we missed that.
John, thank you so much for sitting down and joining us once again. Always great to have you on, and we appreciate you setting the table for 2026 with us. It's going to be another great year. Love getting some insight on your process and some of the work you guys are doing that we will be seeing in the near future. So thanks again. And now we want to take it to you all. Is there anything about the process and some of the work that they're doing that you didn't know that you gained from this? And also some of the things that we've been talking about that they're actively working on, like the full Frankfurt show from 1994, live from Long Island, and obviously Sparks, which we started talking about last year. Between that and everything coming up on YouTube lately, what have you been excited about? What of these new projects are you looking forward to as well? You can reach out to us at glasshousespodcast@gmail.com. We are also on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and we've got a great Discord server where we all get together. It's kind of a real-time message board chat room where we've got fans and listeners connecting and talking about all things Billy. We've got a good group of collectors in there, and we talk about other music we're into. We talk about life, we talk about sports, and everything under the sun pretty much. So it's a really great hang. And if you're interested in connecting with us there or anywhere else, we've got all that info down in the show notes. And we'd love to hear from you. It's going to be an exciting year, and we're going to continue covering all of this as things get closer to fruition and coming out. But until then, we will see you all very, very soon.